All right, so I got Brandon Atterbury. I got Jeremy Martin with me. Well, he's not actually here. He's disappeared from his little section of the screen. But uh, Brandon Atterbury. I'm not gonna say your first and last name every time. I'm just gonna stick it to Brandon. I don't know
Brandon.
why I did
Yeah.
that. So you served in the military. Not many people serve in the military. Actually, I just looked up a fun fact. Only 1.4 million Americans are active duty right now, and there's
Wow.
what 365 million Americans. That's a fraction of a percent of Americans that decide, you know what, fuck it, you won't volunteer, I'm a volunteer. I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna get in the front so you guys can be in the back. You guys don't have to worry about it. And
That's probably quite a few of the people that join the military, but that's not why everyone joins the military.
no, I'm not saying that's why. I just have a certain amount of respect for the people that decide to stand up and say, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do this so you guys don't. You know?
Understandable. Yeah, we'll have to get into that sometime and really dissect the reasons why we've heard and we've seen people join. But yeah, man, I agree. Sure.
Absolutely. So, how long were you? How long were you in, man?
So I served from I joined February of. I actually joined before I was out of high school. Um, uh, I visited. I visited a few colleges in the local area, and and visiting them decided, man, I couldn't really picture me going to college and what I was going to do. So
Yeah, they're Texas colleges.
yeah, well, I had the GPA for it. I just couldn't figure out what I'd want to pay to go to college for, right? But I needed to do something. And in hindsight, the trade of joining the military, right, is really what I was looking for. But so joined when I was in high school. Had my mother co-sign, saying that she was okay with me joining, and I stayed in the delayed entry program for a year. Went to boot camp in February of 2006, and then I separated in May of 2015.
Yeah, yeah. I ended up joining in 2003, September. Yeah, ended up going to a boot camp and right before it got cold. It was kind of a little sweet spot or whatever. I did just over 11 years in that bitch. Uh, but did you like your service, your time in service? How was that?
Um, so in hindsight, I did, and I think it's just kind of human nature to get rid of the idea of all the bad things that happened, and focus on those. So when you're remembering memories and things like that, you remember the good stuff and the good times that kind of made it what it was.
God, ain't that
Um,
the truth?
I don't regret joining at all, but there were definitely times when I was in where I remember thinking to myself, like, geez, I cannot wait to be out. I cannot wait to get, a civilian job. I cannot wait to grow a beard, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
fuck yeah.
so that definitely occurred, but no, I mean overall, I wouldn't be where I am today without the opportunity that I had, and making the most of that opportunity. So no, I don't regret it, and I do. I have I guess positive feelings about my time served.
Man, you sound like a fucking PSA or a commercial. You need to
I
drink
know, man. I'm
more.
trying not to, but at the same time, it just is what it is, right? I mean, there were definitely some. I mean, you and I both know, right? Both that we served on, we had some really rough times. Um,
Yeah.
and now if you look at the boat and the things that they're doing, you look back and you think, man, all those times that we had were necessary to get the boat to where they're at today, right? But they don't even know what we went through to get the boat to Hawaii, right? To where they are now. So
So you say that, but I'm gonna jump in a little bit there.
yeah,
When you go down and you talk to some of these young kids that are on the boat, we'll just leave it the boat now, and they find out that you're a plank owner and what you went through from construction and stuff, they get pretty excited about talking to the original crew and hearing that we've been there, we did it, and the boat still made it on, so that way they could go do the cool things they're doing. So there is some respect from the kids there for the plank owners.
Absolutely.
What is a
I
plank
thought
owner,
Pretty
dude?
cool to see.
What's a plank owner? I don't think anybody knows what a plank owner is. What's a plank owner?
So, plank owner is a term used to memorialize. Let me use that word. I like that word. The crew that was there for the original commissioning of a submarine, for our submarine, but more importantly to a vessel. A nautical vessel is a plank owner when you commission the vessel.
Yeah, what's that like being a plank owner when you go and be like, yep. Is there still a plaque that has all the original plank owners on there?
There is, and there's still a member of the plank owner crew on the crew.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'll tell you guys the name offline, but there is a guy that we used to work with that has left and come back to the same boat.
No shit.
That's awesome. Hey, so for the audience, right? For whoever ends up watching this video, we're going to keep the boat names and the personal names of the members of the crew and things like that out of this podcast as much as possible. And that's just, so that we can be real, we can be upfront, we can tell stories that you wouldn't normally hear without, not necessarily incriminating, but, without raising the question of, the integrity based on, the stories that people hear, if those people are still serving or if they're not serving and they're out, but their service is still related to what they're doing. So that is the nature of keeping names out of it.
Specifically, the people that aren't part of this, that aren't going to be sitting and talking, we also want to maintain their level of privacy. I'm not able to speak for somebody else, so I don't want to invade their privacy. So we're going to attempt to be respectful of other people's privacy.
Absolutely.
You gay homos. Whatever. We'll play your game. So, all right, cool. You guys had a fairly. I mean, Jeremy, you're still in. Fuck. Shit. From the bottom to the top, you're a pretty significant in leadership role in the military right now. I don't know. Do you kind of want to discuss what you currently do in the military, or do you kind of just want to leave that up to us?
No, I mean I can go over it real quick. So a little bit of backstory since you guys gave yours. I joined the Navy in 2004. I was a nuke ET, the only real nuke rate that's left, still pushing.
First of all, that's arguable at best.
So to fight on our first podcast.
Yeah.
All right. It's interesting.
Yep, there we go. Made chief in 13, commissioned a little over a year ago, and so part of the nuclear Navy's ability to stay in business, if we'll use that term, is they do their own testing, they do their own maintenance, they do their own regulations, specifically in accordance with the Department of Energy's requirements, and that's part of what I facilitate. So I work for the portion of the Navy's nuclear power program that provides regulatory oversight to keep that independence.
Okay, just to be clear, whenever we did our shit on the boat, if we were to fuck up, we get in trouble by the police, which were normally like our chiefs and officers and shit. This motherfucker is now FBI in the nuclear Navy. This motherfucker is the dude that fucks boats. Just to be clear.
Whole ones.
But I mean, I guess you also like enable them to do their job very well. I guess I don't know.
The goal is the same for everybody. We have to go about it different ways. And what I tell people, because as the audience that watches these will see, I get asked frequently how I made it to where I'm at, and
which
why
is a good fucking question.
why I didn't get kicked out a long time ago. The goal is the same, right? The pursuit of safe operation, the ability to sustain, naval power. We'll go that way. Around the globe, that's the ultimate goal. We all have to do our job to maintain it. And I took my licks and I had a good time. And so I attempt to sustain, or rather to support the same goal without screwing the ones and zeros that do all the work.
Did he call us a 1 and a 0? Did he call us?
You're a 0. Well, hey, let's be specific. You're the 0 here.
I'm the 1. It's a digital thing. I get it. It's fine. That works.
All right, that's bullshit.
Five.
Anyway, all right, that's fine. That's cool. So obviously Jeremy, he stayed in. He's gonna probably do his 20, retire, which you know.
July 1st, 2027 will put me at 24 years of service, and that will be my last day in the Navy.
Yeah.
Not that I have a countdown or anything.
I couldn't do that. But that's just personally me. Obviously, Brandon, you didn't do it either. I don't think they allow people with beards to stay in. So you got out. Why'd you end up getting out, man?
Man, okay, so to jump into this, I think it's best to categorize the answer. So one part was I felt like I'd gotten all from the Navy that I could, and the opposite of that is I don't think I could give any more to the Navy, and that's from a professional standpoint. I had extreme differences with the way that the program runs and the way that the machine keeps moving. Some people stay in because they want to affect the machine. Some people don't think that they can make an effect that they would like to have, so they get out. That was where I was at. Aside from that, making more money, trying to plan a private life, trying to enjoy, having free time and family time, and not going back out to
sex on a regular basis.
Right. The last part of it being, just the way that the nuclear naval submarine program is set up. And we can jump into that a little bit later, but that was one of my most major issues with staying in.
Well, I actually ended up getting out because of an unfortunate incident on my second boat. I had some mishaps with my first boat, ended up going to another boat. Not because I was a shitbag, but just because of the situation. I don't want that to come off weird, but ended up split touring, going to another boat. Ended up missing the birth of my second child, which had a severe impact on my outlook of the military due to the situation that I was on a shore duty.
Well, and to interject a little bit, right? So obviously the first boat, you said mishap, but basically the boat was being decommissioned and it was going to do a change of home port to Hawaii. You chose to stay in Virginia based on the fact that, your wife was pregnant.
And
right?
I just bought a fucking house.
And you just bought a house. And this is right before the recession in 2008, right?
Bubble, man. That bubble fucking fucked me.
So just perfect timing.
Yeah, still got that house.
But then to fast forward, right, you said, your second child was being born. You missed the birth. I mean, was that due to you being on deployment? I mean, were you still on a boat? You were out at sea on deployment during that time?
You're a fucking dick. No, man, I was not.
I know the answer, and I get it, and I know it stings.
I was not on a boat out to sea doing important fucking missions. I was at a shore duty training students. I wasn't even fucking training students. I was on the boat that eventually will be training students that was being refitted in another state. And
so you were on shore duty, away from home port, while on shore duty.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out how to afford you the ability to go home during the birth of your child.
Exactly. So it kind of put a little shitty outlook on the Navy's kind of view of how they treat their personnel or whatever. My bad experience, whatever. I know that's not everybody's experience, but that's ultimately what led me to getting out of the military. And I mean, we can cover that later. There's a lot to that story, but yeah, I ended up getting out of the military after 11 years, and I don't regret the service that I did. There's so many good things about the military that people may not ever get to experience. and one of them is the brotherhoods that you develop on your boats. Like, you guys, I'll always consider brothers for the rest of my life, no matter whatever happens, and that is directly due to the military. My wife, I met my wife in the military. Never take that away from the military. Without being where I was when I was, I would have never met her. Would never have had the children I have today. I totally don't regret that, and unfortunately, due to other incidences, it led me to getting out of the military, and obviously, not everybody gets out. I mean, Jeremy, you stayed in. Why'd you stay in?
So I'm not doing that for theatrical reasons. I have been on the verge of getting out just about every time I've reenlisted is a way to put it. And until I commissioned, Cindy and I's plan, my wife and I, my bad for using her name, we'll edit that out. My wife and I's plan.
I'm not editing that out.
Until I commissioned, my wife and I's plan was to do a year and a half on the boat, my third boat, for my chief tour, and then we were going to get out of the Navy at 15 years. But I got picked up for a commissioning program, and so we're going to write it out for retirement at this point. Specifically, I gave up as a chief. I love training sailors. I loved protecting people from what Will went through. I gave up that in my current position, but I get to come home to my family every day. I'm not going underway. The hours are still long. I still work for people that I don't necessarily agree with their philosophies. But at 24 years, I'll retire. I'll be 42 years old and I'll retire. I'll be happy about it.
That's legit, man.
There's pride for service and pride of country and that kind of stuff, but it's the people you meet along the way that keep you doing it. I don't have like some grandiose reason for doing what I do at this point.
So let me I'll point out one of the reasons why I got out was because I was up for chief while I was at the same prototype that you were at, Will, and taking the exam. I had already made the decision that I was going to get out. The reason was because I could not accept that I would possibly go to a class of ship that I was not a systems expert on. So, being from, and we're going to divulge a few more details here, but we're on Virginia-class submarines. I mean, I think that's pretty safe to figure out based on the fact that we were on one that was being built back in the 2006 timeframe. But on Virginia-class submarine, that's where I spent my first tour of duty on, and then went to prototype, was an instructor, up for chief, which means if I go back out to sea, I'm going to have to be a systems expert or a submarine. But they don't send...
System expert as much as electricians are required to be an expert on anything, but... I can't help but put that
up. What the fuck does that mean?
Fair enough.
Just to be clear, electricians were the best fucking rate.
Yeah. We were doing RC-ed maintenance on the last Ors, but that's cool. That's because you left and Anderson stayed.
Yeah. What rate shocked their fucking eyeballs? Okay, it wasn't the electricians. Just to be clear.
Well, I seem to remember somebody changing a light bulb and getting their hand stuck in there because you were getting shocked down an 18-man berthing.
All right, just to be clear, that was a fucked up experience. We don't need to bring that up. We can talk about that later. Brandon, I really think you should continue with what you're saying. We don't need to bring up old shit right now.
My point is that, you have these experiences that we'll label as growing and learning experiences, right? Such as being shocked, whatever, learning how to troubleshoot, those types of things, right? When you make chief, you're a systems expert. You are supposed to be the go-to person to help figure out a path for troubleshooting, things like that, when your division can't figure it out, right? And you're training everybody that's below you for the next rank up. Well, there's a 6 to 88, there's a boomer class. There are multiple classes of submarine that I'm not an expert on, and I could not picture myself transitioning as such. And that was mainly due to my first chief, and the fact that he came from a boomer class submarine with a very senior division who operated well, and he seemed to be the slow leg of that. He seemed to hinder the division more so than help it, and that was my maybe anecdotal, feedback or information to make that decision. But that's how I made the decision. I don't want to be that chief that goes to another class of ship and holds back my division.
Absolutely, I get that, man. Yeah, that guy, that guy played a pivotal role in a lot of people's lives, and I totally understand your situation. But I mean, getting out of the military is not all that of a easy transition, right? I mean, there's a lot of hesitance to do it. There's a lot of pushback to do it. I mean, just the decision. I mean, when you're talking about, hey, I'm thinking about getting out of the military, I mean, how many people were like, hey, no, you should really stay in this? Like, I mean, did you get pushback?
I did. So I was at Prototype during a period in which there was a large investigation ongoing for the integrity of the personnel at Prototype.
Motherfucker.
And that's a whole other scenario as well, but we'll stay off of that for the most part. But basically, they were doing an investigation, and there was an investigative team that was brought in, external to Prototype to lead the investigation. So I actually sat down with a counterpart during the investigation. He wanted to discuss what my plans were for getting out, and kind of in line with that, talked me into re-enlisting and staying because he felt that the Navy could use personnel like myself to continue in those leadership roles. It's hard having that conversation because they ask you the question of why you're getting out, and I gave him kind of a joking answer of, well, it's because I can't grow a beard in the military, right? And he says, well, that seems kind of petty, doesn't it? I said, well, the problem is that in order for you to get to a point where you can address a situation like growing a beard in the military, and whether or not that is an issue that should be addressed, you'd have to fix so much of the military to that point, right? Specifically the nuclear Navy. You'd have to resolve a lot of issues in that program to get to the point where we could grow beards and still be trusted to do our jobs. So I'm getting out because you talking to me as a Master Chief in that rank, in that position, still are not even powerful enough to make that change or affect that change. And that's the reason why I don't see the point of staying in, because I don't even know that I could get to your position in my career.
Yeah.
So that's where I was with it, and I still hold to that today because I haven't heard a reasonable explanation. And I know that some people take that challenge on of, what, I'm going to be the person that makes that change and affects that change, and I hope that eventually that happens. But I wasn't willing to keep fighting in that army, right? I don't want to fight against the own mechanism that is the military, right? I want to be a part of it. I just think that there was nothing that could be done.
I get that, man. It's tough. It really is. We had so many officers. The JOs, they're actually really close to junior personnel because they interact with us so often, and you find good ones. You find really good ones, and you're like, hey, man, you're an officer in the military. You're in a position where you can actually affect change. And the really good ones, they get out because of that. They don't find that they can make that change, and we lose them. It sucks because I think if those guys actually stayed in, like Jeremy's one of those guys, and he actually stayed in, and it doesn't happen very often. If they just stayed in, enough of them, maybe they could, but I totally understand that. You saying that you wouldn't be able to get to that point in your military career and still make a change, because there are a lot of guys that stay in that shouldn't. They really shouldn't. I don't know. It kind of sucks.
I had a mentor tell me, "You're too smart to stay in the Navy," and he told me that he was told the same thing by his mentor, and so on and so forth. Um, just to hammer home the idea that there are guys that are just very smart and very intelligent, and their skills and their intelligence can be utilized outside of the military for their own sake, right? And I think Jeremy is a great, he's a great example of that. As he's sacrificing his freedom and the time that he spends with his family and things like that to spend with naval reactors in order to kind of perpetuate the integrity of the military force that we have. But at the same time, right, like he said, even he struggles with the idea of getting out every time. There's a point at which you have to consider, okay, well, is the money that I'm getting paid, is the time that I'm going to devote worth the salary and worth the fact that I'm sacrificing the time for my family and my kids, my wife. And like you said, right, your wife said, "Hey, I've had enough, I'm ready to tap out," and you made the decision, like, what, like, absolutely, let's do it then, right? And it just, all of those outside forces play a factor and a role in determining whether or not you're going to continue to do the job.
Yeah, definitely. Were you scared to get out? Because there's a lot of horror stories of getting out. You get out and you can't find a good job, and I mean, not everything translates from what we do in the military to civilian activities. And were you worried about it at all?
So myself personally, no. To add a little bit to the background of myself, so I showed up to the boat, was underage, couldn't even drink, left the boat. I was about 23, 24, something around that. I was married and I had a stepson at the time. So when I made the decision to re-enlist, it was more so about the idea that, I could not, continue along the path of just kind of winging my decisions, which joining the military, I put a lot of thought into, but for the most part was winging it, right? You're really jumping in feet first. You have no idea. You're jumping in head first. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
Fuck no.
So getting out of the military, I looked at it as the same thing, right? And I couldn't afford to get out of the military without knowing what I was getting myself into. So I made the decision, hey, let me re-enlist. I will get the boat ready for its first deployment once we got settled in Hawaii. And then I'm out. I'm ready to go to shore duty. I'm going to spend 3 years on shore duty, and then I'm getting out. And I am going to, figure out my career path from there. So that really afforded me the opportunity of, okay, I could work on some college because I wasn't out at sea. I could focus on the family a little bit. I could work on my exit strategy, I guess. So I ended up getting divorced while I was on shore duty. And from there, the plan changes a little bit more. But the idea was, hey, you know what? I start looking for jobs that I want. What are the expectations of those jobs? What are the requirements? And how do I fit myself into them? And that's what I worked on. So for me, it wasn't a worry of getting out. It was making sure that I was prepared going into that. But I literally gave myself a 3-year time frame of doing that by re-enlisting for that purpose specifically. I also chose Prototype, the same shore duty that you went to. I chose Prototype because there were a lot of stories of guys that, went to shore duty, had the intention of getting out, and got too scared and stayed in. Right? They convinced themselves, well, the boat wasn't that bad. It's not as terrible out at sea. I went to the worst shore duty I could picture, so that whenever I was there was no way I was going to wake up and be like, hey, you know what? Going to sea isn't that bad. This isn't terrible. No, I wanted it to be terrible. Like, remind me of why I'm getting out. And that's exactly what Prototype served. You know what? I went there. It was terrible, just like I expected, and it served the purpose of reminding me, hey, this is why you were separating from the military. Your time is worth more than this.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I totally get that. So, I mean, fuck, man, Prototype was shitty. It really was. And you were on the sister boat that I was on, and we kind of went through that together, and I totally know where you come from. But more so like when you're talking about getting out of the military, there's like a process that you have to do. You can't just like do your service and then boom, hey, here are your discharge papers, you're out. Like, kind of did what do you have to do to actually like transition to civilian life and get out of the military? Was there a process, or was it just like, hey, you're done, like Forrest Gump, you know? Or did you, have to do a lot of shit? Like, I think there are like, classes like they got TAPS. You definitely got to take TAPS before you can get out. Kind of, what was that all like for you?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's definitely a process. You don't just get your papers served to you, you're out of the military, and then you figure it out from there, because then you're living essentially without a paycheck. So I had seen a few people get to that point where they waited too long up until their point of discharge and separation, and they didn't have the next thing lined up, and they were kind of in a scramble mode and had to accept whatever job came at them. And I wanted to avoid that at all costs. So part of that was going to shore duty and giving myself a 3-year mark. The other part of it was, within about a year and a half out, lining everything up and planning absolutely to the T what I was going to do. So for myself, I found that the 6-month mark was really where I hit it. I went to TAPS, like you said, the separation course that's now mandated and required by the military, where they talk about resume writing, they talk about interviewing with jobs, the different tools that you have afforded to you. I went to that at about my 1-year mark, and I used that class time, which is about a week, 5-day period, to write resumes. Write resumes, send them out, and continue updating resumes. From there, it was all about setting up interviews. So I set up job interviews with a couple of different corporations. I went and interviewed with a couple corporations that I actually wasn't invested in, more so than just getting the interview experience. There were a few that I was very interested in, and couldn't. I didn't get a job offer, right? And that's it's a little disheartening being told no, but trying to improve myself and make myself more marketable was the point and the strategy. So by the time I hit my 6-month mark, I felt very comfortable with interviews and relating my military experience to civilian experience, which is a very large gap that you don't recognize until you're trying to tell somebody across the table what you actually did and how it relates to the job that they're hiring for. But I was offered a job 4 months out, after I attended a job fair. It was the job that I was searching for, and I accepted it, and it worked out. It worked out for me. I can say I'm one of the lucky people that was able to make it work and make it happen.
Yeah, TAPS was.
I don't want to hear that you say that you're one of the lucky people. You just got done saying you had a 3-year plan to get out of the Navy.
3-year plan, but at the same time, still, I mean, it doesn't work out for everyone just based on how it works, right? I mean, even going to shore duty and saying that I had a 3-year plan, my 3-year plan was that hopefully whenever I was 6 months out, I could go to job interviews. Hopefully at my 1-year point, I could go to TAPS, right? You go in with the anticipation that you'll get afforded these things, but it's not a requirement, past the fact that it's written down on paper and that your command doesn't necessarily have to give you that opportunity. They certainly don't give that to everyone.
So there's a reason to background that for everybody else that's watching that doesn't necessarily understand that. The Navy has a lot of requirements that are written down that don't necessarily apply to the submarine service.
Yes.
Spending any amount of time on a submarine, you understand what a Navy requirement may look like on a piece of paper, and also know that it may not hold any weight.
Absolutely. And, the fact that you knowing what the requirements are and being able to show those on paper benefits you greatly if you're trying to prove a point. Hey, this is my plan. This is what I'm trying to do. I would like to do my job in the military, but I would also like to plan my future outside of the military. They shouldn't be allowed to work against you on that. However, it does work that way in some cases if you're not protecting yourself and making sure that you know what you're allowed to do. So, absolutely, you're right.
Dude, I don't know about you, but for me, TAPS, all I spent that whole class doing was writing resumes, applying for jobs, and trying to erase all the incriminating pictures I could off of all my social media. I think I had a dick pic on Facebook since like '08 or some shit like that. It was like one of the ones where we were doing like some kind of like drinking triathlon at the housing in Connecticut. I ended up having my shit out. How was that on Facebook for that long?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what you're talking about because you pulled your dick out in the most inappropriate times on a regular basis.
So I think Facebook allowed it because it's so small, it didn't realize what it was.
It's not another face, bro.
It was like, hey, that's probably all right. Yeah. Fuck you guys.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what TAPS was. You're picking up some good information, but for the most part, if you're going to TAPS, you already know what TAPS is, and hopefully you've been researching and preparing yourself for your exit strategy ahead of time. But absolutely, you're right. No, it was that. That's all I did. I applied for jobs, job fairs. I got set up with a couple of the corporations that work directly with the military, which I'm not going to throw out names, but I absolutely attribute those companies to my success. So maybe in the long run, like I'm just not sure what the legalities of throwing their names out are, but I would absolutely love to name them in future podcasts or future episodes.
Yeah, so. Definitely. There are headhunters out there that are absolutely great for service members, and I owe everything that I have right now to the headhunters that got me the job that I got today. It was actually.
Well, hey, Will, I appreciate you bringing up the job that you have now. What state do you live in?
Which one?
Currently, Will, where do you live?
Ohio.
OH, right? IO. How's that feel there, Michigan fan?
What the fuck's wrong with you? I'm gonna edit everything about you out of this motherfucker.
Kyla last night was giving him or a couple nights ago was giving him some major shit about that. I'm not happy about it.
I got flashbacks right now. Will tell me he's from South Detroit and how hardcore he is, so I'm just trying to keep it all in there.
Mile 7 and whatnot, yeah.
All this is getting edited out. Fuck you guys. I'm gonna leave it. Fuck it. I don't care. So transitioning out into the civilian world, it's definitely not an easy thing. I was really worried about it when I was getting out because you kind of develop.
Sideburns? You couldn't show people your sideburns, right, Brandon? Brandon's a fan of you and the sideburns.
That's correct.
Yeah, nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about, and I'm thankful. But anyway, you develop a weird fucking social skill for just people on submarines, and it doesn't necessarily translate. Huh? Anal sideburns. Yeah. All right, we're gonna go with it. You motherfuckers. Yep. But when you talk about your military, experiences with civilians, does it translate? Does it go over well?
You know what? It does and it doesn't. There's obviously I've done a lot of filtering out of the way that I spoke to people on the boat compared to how we run in a regular corporation. And the fact of the matter is that the submarine fleet is the last, kind of working organization that uses, hey, we're going to break you until we make you. You know what I mean? That's just how it works. So um, it doesn't translate to the civilian world and the business world because that's not how it's done anymore. And it's understandable from a point of, the submarine fleet. We needed you to fill the watch bill as soon as you showed up. We're shorthanded, and we want to make sure that before you step on the watch bill, and you actually are supposed to relieve me for 6 hours, that you can actually withstand the responsibility and the stresses that come with the job. That we were going to make sure you can handle that. Because if you can't handle it, right, we'd rather break you before you will affect our watch bill, and we try to make plans to go on vacation or, plans to sleep at an extra 6 hours during the day, based off of that, right? So it makes sense. But nowadays, it's just not like that. In the civilian world, it's not like that. You're not underwater for most civilian jobs. So putting yourself in check because of that fact and recognizing that, there's a sense of urgency, but it's not quite the urgency that you need to have when you're in the military is necessary. But at the same time, nothing is as hard, nothing is as fast paced as it was in the military. When I was sitting maneuvering, making decisions on what to do next, nothing is harder than that. So everything works out in its own way based on the fact that I had that experience.
Yeah, that's true. Jamar, you kind of had an experience with when shit really goes down in maneuvering, and you really find out what people you drill and you train and you try to prepare yourself for those kind of moments where shit gets real on a boat. And I think you had a kind of a good experience with that while you were on the boat, right?
So yes, I had a situation like you talked about. It's entertaining with you segueing it in like that. Since you were there, you were standing watch next to me. One of the senior mechanics in the plant, not necessarily in the department, but in the plant standing watch at the time, came in and said he was going to go adjust the 4,500 pound to 3,000 pound reducer. And we were like, cool, do your thing.
Real quick, 4,500 pounds, 3,000 pounds. What are you talking about?
The high pressure air system. So we have a reducer that goes from the high pressure air of 4,500 pounds and reduces it down to about 3,000 pounds.
That's a lot of fucking air.
It's a high pressure. Yep, the submarine works on high voltage and high pressure systems. So he comes in and says he's going to go do this thing because the logs were getting close to being out of spec, and nobody paid any attention and said, go do your thing. A couple minutes later, I hear this incredibly loud shake your seat type noise coming from the plant. Brandon, I can't deal with it, dude.
Dude, I've never heard a noise like this ever in my fucking life. I swear to God.
It was terrifying.
It was insane.
And because we were standing, the appropriate watch, and we weren't facing each other, shooting the shit with the guy sitting behind us hanging out.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not fucking doing that.
Because that never happens. I may or may not have had to look directly to my left to figure out. And I look to my left and where all the reactor plant parameters are. My job, right, to be concerned about that. I look to my left and nothing is changing. So I look at Will and I said, it's not me. And Will hasn't stopped looking at me the whole time. His jaw is dropped and he's waiting for somebody to tell him what to do.
Dude, I didn't know what the fuck to do, man. I swear to God, I've never heard a noise like that. That was never in the fucking drills. We never fucking trade on that fucking noise. I was shitting myself, man. Like, I was really hoping you were going to fucking save the day. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. It's crazy.
Yep. So that's it. That situation just left Will and I sitting and maneuvering, wondering when we were going to die and by what. Just knew it wasn't from my panel, so we were cool.
Yeah.
So Will and I stood watch side by side, 8 months that year? Pretty much in the same watch team.
Yeah,
and
a lot.
That became standing order number one. Was when shit hit the fan, Will was to look to me to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, fuck that, man, dude. What was rule number one on a submarine: don't fucking die.
Yeah.
I thought you guys when you were talking about the weird sound and the weird looks that were going on in maneuvering, I thought you were going to talk about when Jeremy Martin got punched in the face.
Oh shit,
Saving
dude.
that for another time.
Yeah, I guess we'll save that story for another time.
Yeah, dude.
But I think I'd like to take a poll to the audience. Does Jeremy Martin have a punchable face? Is that a face that you would like to punch?
Yeah.
I hate you right now.
Because I think that poll will serve a good it'll serve a good purpose in the fact that when we tell that story.
Dude, just think about how much of the military wants to punch that face right now. How much
Oh,
of the sub community wants to punch that face.
There's no telling.
Oh yeah, it's been my new job, dude. They're not happy when they see me come down.
Yeah, people love auditors. That's the one thing. If you're an auditor, not an otter, an auditor. How do you say it? Auditor?
Auditor. I thought you called me an otter at first.
I was saying
really
not an otter. An auditor.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I'm glad you guys were with me today discussing the military. Maybe we'll delve into more of the crazy shit that happened during our careers. We were really hesitant to kind of give away some of that stuff during our pilot episode, but there's definitely hundreds and hundreds of stories that are coming. So if you guys are interested, let us know. If you guys want to see more, subscribe and like and hit us up, whatever. And we'll try to give you everything that you guys are interested in. Thanks.